Madrid, 1834. The palace corridors were heavy with incense and silence, yet inside the king's private chamber, a different ritual unfolded. Ferdinand VII of Spain lay dead, his reign of cruelty at last extinguished. But the physician summoned to his bedside was not asked to pray or mourn. He was ordered to preserve something grotesque, an anatomical deformity that had haunted Ferdinand all his life. Beneath silk sheets lay the symbol of his shame, the secret that shaped both his private torment and his public tyranny. With trembling hands, the doctor understood. This was not just flesh and blood. It was the embodiment of a kingdom's decay. To grasp the horror of this moment, we must turn back to Ferdinand's beginning. Born in 1784 at El Escorial Palace, he was the product of centuries of royal inbreeding. The Spanish Bourbons, like the Habsburgs before them, had married cousin to cousin, uncle to niece, preserving their dynasties at the expense of their bloodlines. The result was a genetic nightmare. Fragile bodies, unstable minds, and deformities whispered about in every court of Europe. Ferdinand was born into this poisoned legacy, the child of Charles IV and Maria Louisa of Parma, first cousins themselves. The dice were loaded against him before his first breath. Childhood in the palace offered little relief. His father was weak-willed, more comfortable hunting than ruling. His mother paraded her affair with Manuel de Godoy, Spain's powerful favorite, openly humiliating her husband. Ferdinand grew up in a household dripping with scandal and betrayal. But what marked him most was not his parents' disgrace, it was his own body. By adolescence, physicians whispered of his condition, writing in secret that the young prince's anatomy was of such extraordinary dimensions and peculiar form that conjugal relations may prove impossible. One doctor described it crudely: thin at the base, grotesquely swollen at the tip, long enough to resemble a walking stick. In an age that prized proportion and refinement, Ferdinand's deformity made him an object of ridicule. Servants gossiped, courtiers laughed behind fans, foreign envoys sent mocking reports home. A boy learns quickly when the world laughs at him, and Ferdinand's response was venom. He grew secretive, then vindictive. A page who stumbled into his chamber was flogged, his family banished from Madrid. A servant's careless smile could mean dismissal, or worse. Ferdinand's paranoia hardened. He believed every bow, every polite word concealed mockery. These humiliations carved the outline of the tyrant he would become. By early manhood, Ferdinand wore a mask of royal courtesy in public, but behind it lay a heart festering with resentment. He viewed compassion as weakness, trust as foolishness. The deformity that should have remained a private burden instead became the blueprint for his reign. And so, when Spain celebrated his first marriage in 1802, the people saw promise: an heir, stability, renewal. Maria Antonia of Naples arrived radiant and hopeful, dreaming of a fairy tale prince. But Ferdinand carried to the altar not only a crown but a curse. The bells of Madrid rang with joy, yet within the palace, the stage was set for tragedy. What awaited the young bride was not romance, but terror, the first in a series of nights that would scar women, destabilize a dynasty, and ultimately poison a nation. The marriage of Ferdinand and Maria Antonia began with grandeur. Madrid's streets were filled with music, bells, and shouts of joy. But behind the palace doors, the truth emerged with brutal speed. Maria Antonia, barely 17, entered the royal bedchamber to find strange cushions, bottles of oil, and medical contraptions laid out like tools for surgery. When Ferdinand revealed himself, the fairy tale dissolved into nightmare. Witnesses later recalled her screams, "Monster! Monster!" as she recoiled in terror. The physicians soothed her with laudanum, an opium tincture, and arranged the royal cushions so the act could proceed. It was less a wedding night than a medical ordeal. From that moment, Maria Antonia's life became a ritual of trauma. Every attempt at intimacy required equipment, drugs, and attendants hovering outside the chamber. Each encounter ended with her sobbing in silence. Twice, she conceived. Twice, she miscarried. The first, in 1804, drained her of strength. The second, in 1805, nearly killed her. Ferdinand, rather than offering comfort, accused her of sabotage, of deliberately moving to cause miscarriage, of secretly opposing his destiny. His paranoia deepened. He ordered restraints crafted of leather and silk to keep her still. He consulted astrologers and mystics, timing their couplings to lunar cycles, convinced the stars could force nature to bend. The palace became a theater of quacks and charlatans, selling fertility potions and rituals to a desperate king. Maria Antonia withered under the weight of humiliation. Laudanum became her constant companion, numbing her body but enslaving her spirit. She turned to prayer, begging forgiveness for sins she did not understand. At 21, she died officially of fever, unofficially of despair. Whispers spread that she had been poisoned, perhaps even by Ferdinand himself. When the palace apothecary turned up dead days later, leaving behind a confiscated letter, suspicion only grew. Spain's first Queen of Tears was gone, but Ferdinand's hunger remained. In 1816, he married Maria Isabel of Portugal. Again the wedding was grand, again the promise of heirs filled the air, and again the reality was horror. The wedding night left Maria Isabel bruised and bleeding, her screams echoing through the palace. She developed a stutter, flinched at her husband's presence, and wasted away. Within 2 years, she too was dead, another casualty of Ferdinand's curse. Undeterred, Ferdinand married a third time, to Maria Josepha of Saxony in 1819. This queen approached marriage like a laboratory experiment. She kept records, consulted physicians, and endured intimacy scheduled like surgery. There was no romance, only procedure. For 10 years, she suffered phantom pregnancies, each one raising hope, then crushing it. Finally, in 1829, she conceived. Europe rejoiced. Spain prepared for an heir. But the miracle turned to tragedy. The baby girl was born prematurely and died within hours. Maria Josepha followed 3 weeks later, feverish and broken. Ferdinand, unhinged, refused burial. He ordered doctors to continue treatments on corpses already decaying, filling the palace with the stench of death until even he could no longer deny reality. 3 marriages, 3 coffins. Each young queen entered the palace with hope and left it in a shroud. Ferdinand, mocked as a boy, had now transformed his curse into a weapon. The private deformity of his body had become a public disaster. His wives bore not children but suffering, their deaths a grim testament to a king who saw others not as human beings but as tools to be broken in his search for an heir. By the end of his 3rd marriage, Ferdinand was no longer simply a man trapped by shame. He was a tyrant, his paranoia spreading from the bedroom to the throne room. Spain itself was beginning to crumble, and the laughter that had once haunted his childhood now echoed across continents. The nation paid for the deformity of its king. By 1829, Ferdinand's obsession with heirs had reached its breaking point. 3 queens lay in their graves. Spain's empire crumbled, yet the king remained fixated on his curse. His advisors secured a 4th marriage to Maria Christina of Naples, but when she arrived in Madrid, she was already pregnant by another man. Ferdinand, blinded by desperation, accepted the deception. When Isabella II was born in 1830, he claimed her as his own. Spain celebrated, but beneath the joy lingered the cruelest irony. The king who had destroyed wives in his pursuit of an heir would be remembered through a daughter who was almost certainly not his blood. Maria Christina entered a palace transformed into a fortress of paranoia. Ferdinand drilled peepholes into the walls of her chambers, watching her as she prayed, nursed, or simply sat in silence. Meals were delayed for hours, as food tasters sampled every dish twice. Guards were rotated daily, courtiers interrogated, ministers tested with contradictory orders. Any correction was treated as treason. The Queen's letters to Naples, always intercepted, spoke of life inside a glass cage, where every smile was watched, every breath measured. She lost weight, her hair thinned, her hands trembled, yet in public she performed serenity to survive. Ferdinand's madness infected all of Spain. Diplomats reported his instability, alliances dissolved, and revolutionary propaganda mocked him as both tyrant and invalid. To his people, their king was not a ruler, but a grotesque symbol of decline. Meanwhile, Ferdinand's health faltered. He trembled with palsy, raved about poison, and accused Maria Christina of trying to kill him through touch. Court physicians performed humiliating examinations before any intimacy. Cabinet meetings dissolved into rants about imaginary plots. In 1833, his body finally gave way. Officially, he died of gout, but witnesses saw a man consumed by paranoia, shame, and exhaustion. On his deathbed, he called for dead wives, demanded investigations into conspiracies that never existed, and drifted into delirium. The autopsy revealed the truth long whispered: a member 14 inches long, scarred by years of failed self-surgeries, a grotesque monument to desperation. Physicians sealed the evidence in Vatican vaults, where it remains hidden. It was not just anatomy, it was the physical symbol of a reign deformed, a kingdom dragged into madness by one man's shame. Ferdinand left Spain fractured. The colonies were gone, the treasury drained, civil war looming. His only heir, Isabella II, inherited not stability but chaos. His legacy was not glory but wreckage. 3 dead queens, a traumatized fourth, and a nation mocked across Europe. And yet, Ferdinand achieved a kind of immortality, not as a statesman, not as a king, but as a warning. His story is a testament to how private humiliation can warp into public catastrophe, how the shame of one man can become the tragedy of millions. He was both victim and villain, cursed by blood, consumed by paranoia, and remembered not for greatness, but for grotesquerie. The physician who preserved his body in 1834 must have understood the irony. He was not just preserving a corpse. He was preserving the symbol of a ruined dynasty, the cautionary tale of a king whose body betrayed him, and whose kingdom paid the price.